Hello and welcome. I think we've probably all got a shelf of shame, I think, in our game collection. You know, games we've had for years that we don't dare part with. Think, you know, one day I'll play it, one day I'll play it, and often it's the case that this never happens, and I'm no exception. I used to be pretty big fan of OCS, but the Gamers, the Operational Combat System. And I had the original Guderian's Blitzkrieg 1. And I remember when that arrived just thinking, this is so different, so innovative compared to lots of the other games, having to control your supply, to fuel and to arm your and equip your units. And that evolved. The next one was Enemy at the Gates, and I've got many good memories of playing that multiplayer with teams. Something always, I don't know whether we were just always playing it wrong, but something that used to bug me a little bit was that it struck me that you never got a front line per se, except when you set up the scenario. All the scenarios started with a pretty sort of classic front line. But then it just seemed to sort of migrate into clumps of units. Partly because the sort of cities offered such a good haven to your defending guys, that they were good places to stockpile the supply, very good defensive benefits in terms of the terrain. You ended up with these kind of islands of strength. And you never really got a front line again. It seemed to happen time and time again. I don't know, maybe we were just playing it wrong. But I mean, we played it quite a lot, and it seemed some pretty experienced players. And it seemed to me that was the way that the games tended to run. Still a great experience, and certainly look back with very fond memories of those times. But I think after that, I bought things like Burma. And I've had them sold Sicily. But getting back to the shelf of shame, I also bought DAK. So this is DAK 1, the original, 1997. So we are talking 25 years, and I had the maps laminated at the time, all good to go. Never punched it, never clipped it. Just sat on the shelf. I suspect if the maps hadn't been laminated, probably would have sold it. Anyway, yeah, I also had a very poor experience with Beyond the Rhine. We played that at a weekend a couple of years ago, and the whole debate with the artillery came to the fore, and you couldn't afford to fire it. They were just units that arrived as reinforcements, as potential shell catchers to take losses, and yeah, just the fueling of all these multiple non-divisional motorised and mechanised units. I just thought there were much better games on that campaign, so I certainly came away with no intention to purchase it. Some people love it, and you know, each their own. But just recently I've started reading The Crucible of War by Barry Pitt. I've just finished the first volume, and yeah, interesting campaign, certainly in the initial phases that I've read so far. I think I've read the whole thing at some point, but I'm having a second go, and I thought, I've got DAK on the shelf, let's get it out. So that's what I've done. The maps are actually on a table with counters on them. Just clipped enough counters to do the initial Italian offensive scenario. So you get September 15th or 12th until about the end of December. It's about 30 odd turns, so it's quite sizable in turn number, but not so much in counter count. Fairly limited counter density, which is nice. I had I already had version 4.1a of the rules, and they're pretty much the same. Not sure of any significant changes, so I'm running with those. You can get the latest charts. Version 4.3, that's all available. I mean, all the games are very well supported. So we've just kicked off. So I've just got to do the second half of turn 2 for the Allies. The Italians have to comply with the Mussolini line mandate, which they've just managed to do, and they also have to move additional troops across the Egyptian border. Quite a few need to be in move mode, so they feel a little bit vulnerable and exposed, but of course the British are not that well equipped in terms of units at the start. Pretty meagre resources that will build with time, I'm sure. So yeah, I think it's still, and I like the way that the supplies works. I think it works well in the desert, because the more you read about it, the logistics of the desert were just such a big factor. I suppose as a introduction to OCS, would you recommend DAK? I'm not so sure. I mean, there are lots of special rules, and I did have to spend a bit of time going through all those for the two sides, and the various rules on shipping and port damage, and you have units which start off green, so you're not yet desert ready. You're moving stuff in from Sicily, and the shipping table was modified after, I think, DAK 2 came out. So, but that's available. That's in place. So it's probably not one to get into as a first OCS session. Having said that, it's probably quite hard to buy anyway. So. But yeah, I'll just give you a quick look at the map, and you can see what's going on. This is scenario 7.2, I think it is. So it just uses 2 of the 5 maps. So it's quite. If I just stand back, it's quite manageable. So you've got a 4 foot. It's 4 foot across the width of the table. This is a 4x6. So 2 maps fits comfortably along the short side, and it goes up to you see just the start of Cyrenaica. Around there's Derna with a couple of supply tokens in it, and there's Tobruk, where the Italians have got a few troops left. Some have moved up to the border, and you sweep down to Bardia, and here they are complying with the September the 15th minimums, and also the Mussolini line minimums. So they've just crept east of the Mussolini line. Most of them, not all of them, quite a few of them are in move mode, so may get the opportunity to go first and flip to combat mode and have a crack at Sidi Barrani, which you've got to take by, I think it's sometime in October. And to win the game, you've got to get down to Mersa Matruh, which is down here. There are some limitations on what the Allies can do down here. The New Zealand Brigade has to stay in Mersa until released, and that is O'Connor, just there, and he's essentially stacked with some of the Indian Division. That's the fourth Indian, so they're also pegged to Mersa Matruh until released. So there's very little in the reserve. They've got under Strafe-Got, that's 7th Armoured Division at the key road junction, and pretty light on air, so it's a good way to get around. I mean, that was the biggest change when they moved to version 4. I think they really made an improvement with the air rules. I remember playing Enemy at the Gates almost dreading when you had flight, because the turns, you know, almost doubled in length. But they're much cleaner now and they work very well. So there's not much air anyway to deal with, just enough to give you a flavour of how the air works. And you'll see around here, that's the new logistical charts for the axis. And these other little play aids are things that you can just get to meet, which means you don't need to have all the other maps, because some of the other maps have some critical charts and tables on them. But some of these, with a couple of bits of A4, you can do away with the need for all the extra maps. So yeah, quite enjoying it. Nice to get back into a bit of OCS. I feel this one has been given the opportunity to gather far too much dust, so it's nice to take it for an outing.